It's been a beautiful summer here in East Devon, and I've been spending as much time as possible down on a beach. This was a really low tide, and we could see all of the seaweeds and the beautiful rock pools, and even a bit of sand, which is a little unusual on our pebble beach. With all this beautiful weather, I've been finding it hard to stay in the studio and work on the Microseasons project. I've mainly wanted to be out on the beach, experiencing these beautiful environments firsthand. My name's Alex Boone. I'm a nature artist, and I'm working on a nature journaling project to explore the 72 microseasons of East Devon. And from time to time, just getting caught up in sketching outside. I've recently really got into this idea of doing my nature journaling observations on a sheet of paper. This is a sheet of Bristol paper, which is perfect for mixed media and ink. I've been using these Faber-Castell markers and really getting into them as kind of a substrate to put my colour on top of. I do my sketch first in this kind of loose fashion, straight over the top of the words that I've written down. Right now I'm drawing the rocks, and it was quite tough actually, because the tide was coming in at the time and I needed to try and get this down before these rocks had disappeared under the water. I was really under some time pressure when I was working on this drawing. All of these little things, little details, like putting in the pebbles, I kind of want to do them quite quickly, and using kind of different marks to show the differences in textures across the landscape. When working in a little later on with the other elements of my mixed media, I can really use this as a scaffold to embellish and build on those different textures that are being laid down right now. After the marker pens, I go straight in with my little limited palette of Derwent Inktense pencils. Sorry for the wobbly paper. I was kind of sketching on my knees while sat on the beach, which really isn't the best way to sketch for video. But I just work from colour to colour. I started off with the yellow and then went in with the green. And I'm keeping it all dry right now because I'm going to add water all together a little bit later on. This was all the seaweeds on the rocks that you saw a moment ago. They really added a lot of colour to this landscape. I noticed that there were three main colours of the seaweed. This pencil is called Shiraz. It's a wonderful colour for doing this kind of dark maroon, which is the perfect shade for the seaweed. I find skies quite difficult with the Inktense pencils. If I'd had my pan set, I would have used that instead. But the best way to do it is to just shade really, really lightly. And then I'm going to try my best to pick up as much of this ink as possible and try and remove as many of the pencil marks as possible when working in with the water brush. I'm using the tan here. It's a kind of yellow ochre, and it works really well to get a kind of lighter, slightly more green tinge on the horizon, which is always what I see when I'm looking out to sea here. So now I've got my water brush, and I'm just trying to put water down and remove as quickly as possible any blotches and pencil marks in that sky. This is really difficult on a hot day like this, because as I was going, the Inktense was drying pretty much instantly. So I had to work really fast. Not this fast. This is a sped up video, of course, but you get the idea. I'm trying to get as much of this sort of blended in together before it dries as possible. But it was not easy, and I did end up with some blotches to fix later on in the studio. Once that had dried off a little bit, like I said, it didn't take long, I worked on blending in the colours for the sea. Now here I was using things like Payne's Grey, a few different blues, and a nice bright yellow. I kind of wanted to end up with this sort of mixed greeny blue sea, getting darker up towards the horizon, which is what I was seeing out there that day. I quite like to try and put down as much of the Inktense as possible in one layer when I'm outside. So I've did all of the colours in the sea all together, and now adding the water over the top. And now I'm adding the water, I'm trying to keep some of that texture in the different areas of colour, but going from side to side with my water to try and avoid it mixing together too much. It's a really fun way to work. With the sand here, I'm going to be adding some other colours over the top in coloured pencil, hence all the green that I put down here. It really was hot on the beach, and I was able to let that dry quite fast and add in a little bit of other brush pens over the top of the Inktense before then going to the coloured pencil, which is what you're seeing now. I only had a limited little mixture of materials. I think it says in my last video what these materials are that I'm taking outside with me, so you can go and watch that one if you want to. I'll leave it in the description and linked at the end of this video. So that wasn't bad for a quick bit of outdoor work. Probably took me about 45 minutes for that one. But I did get back to the studio and work on it a little bit more with a greater range of coloured pencils. Now, one of the things I've recently started doing is sticking things into my nature journal. So my outdoor nature journal has these paintings in it. So I have this little gully, which I cut the painting in half and then stuck each half on either side of the spine. And that means that you can open out the journal flat without any problems. Since getting back from the beach, I've been absolutely mad about all these seaweeds. I've done a few more pictures. There's just this little one here. And this one was just a really quick little try at that mixed media technique again. And then yesterday I had another go and did this one. Again, I'm sticking this into my nature journal, and I've got a whole bunch of these ones in here now, as you saw before. And I think I'm just going to keep on going with this idea and really exploring the summer at the moment, these seaside moments, and doing that in mixed media. And I guess in a way it is still going to kind of contribute to my Microseasons project. I mean, this is definitely going to be one of the future Microseasons for August. So yeah, I mean, although I'm kind of playing around a lot at the moment with other ideas, it's all going to contribute and it's all going to play into what I'm going to be doing next year. This is the list of my microseason journal pages that I still need to do. But I'm always out finding new microseasons and adding to this list as I go. For the next page in here, we're looking back to early May, when the cow parsley was in bloom and leaves looked fresh on the trees and in the hedges. Cow parsley is one of my favourite mid to late spring plants, so I definitely needed to represent it as one of the microseasons in this journal. I gathered up some of this cow parsley and brought it back to the studio for pressing. Once I had the cow parsley back inside, I laid it out in my large flower press. There were several layers of it, and I'm quite looking forward to seeing how well this has come out. The first thing I need to do is figure out how I'm going to present the cow parsley. And I'm thinking back to that beautiful hedgerow and thinking that against the bright green of the new leaves, it will be absolutely perfect. So I'm going for a really, really vibrant green page and painting it in Derwent Inktense using the palette set this time. I'm trying to make lots of different marks, so some big sort of teardrop shapes to represent the leaves, and those are all being done in different colours. And then underneath, I'm using the brush to make a texture that looks a little bit like the cow parsley leaves. So I can have some of the pressed leaves over the top, but I want them to look as if they're emerging from the background of loads of the real leaves. When we think of spring, we can think of it as having a kind of really chaotic and clustered together vibrancy made up of loads of different greens and loads of different shapes made by different leaves. And that's kind of the effect I'm going for here. I'm building it up bit by bit and adding kind of darker layers of contrast as I go. I'm really interested in using kind of a mixture of a racing green, a kind of dark green, and Payne's grey to fill in all of the darker areas and make that contrast happen. It works really well rather than using black, because I don't want any colours that are going to take away or overwhelm all of these beautiful greens. That's the background done. Now let's take a look at those pressings. They've been in the press for a couple of months now. I'm pretty happy with how this page has turned out. The background is dominating a little bit more than I kind of wanted it to, but at the same time, I kind of was really interested in actually having these pressings be relatively subtle and a part of that scene. You can see now that once the glue has actually dried, it has dried completely transparent, so you can't actually see the glue markings anymore. And that's kind of the main reason why I'm really keen on using this particular glue. It just works really well when you've got a kind of painted background and you want to have some collage embellishment over the top. Another sunny day and I'm back out on the Cliifftop meadow. The knapweed is kind of at its last end. Some of it is going to seed, but there's still enough flowers for all of the bees to enjoy. I'm using the same technique as you saw before, again writing everything out first in a fine liner and doing some little sketches too of the bees and the different types of flowers that we're seeing here. I'm making sure that I not only mention what I'm seeing, but what I'm hearing too. Fine liner done, and once again it's time to go back in with that brush pen. I'm always trying to make marks that represent the type of foliage that we're seeing. So for here in the grasses, there's lots of long marks and little bobbles like these to represent the knapweed. And then areas of deep shading and areas of slightly lighter shading. I really like these colours. There's a cool grey, which is number 1, which is this really light one that I'm using here. And the cool grey number 3 I was using before. They work really well as a background, and they slightly show through when you put your colours in over the top. Autumn feels like it's coming early this year, and I was really taken with all of the many hawthorn berries, almost an overloaded number of hawthorn berries on this hawthorn bush. That was the first thing I put in, straight in with the poppy red Derwent Inktense pencil. And again, using the kind of mark that shows exactly what it is we're looking at. Lots of little dots. And lots of little kind of scribbly splodges for the flowers. The knapweed is a very bright pink. Not quite this colour. This is magenta, so it's called fuchsia in the Inktense set. But it works very well for an approximation of that bright pink of the knapweed. Again, once all of those colours are done, it's time to go straight in with that water brush and really start to liven those colours up. Do you see how the marker pen just shows through? I'm really liking this technique at the moment and wanting to do a whole lot more of it next year. Sometimes I'm having to combine the colours. This is a little bit of a mixture. It's really important to only add the water on top of the pigment and keeping each colour separate. This is one of my things about this Bristol paper. It seems to work really well for this. It doesn't absorb water, so it's very easy to just dab water onto the areas of pigment that need it. Now I'm using coloured pencil to finish off. Earlier on, I mentioned that I've been making some changes in my outdoor nature journal, sticking in pages like this one, and the one that you saw earlier on. You can see that several months ago I mainly just used pencil in my nature journal outdoors, but now I'm adding a lot more of these mixed media techniques. By the way, if you're interested in learning some of these techniques, you know that you can find me at naturejournalingcircle.com, which is my online art school where I teach all of these nature journaling techniques, plus lots of other artistic things as well. And you can either buy the membership and have access to all of my classes, or you can buy individual classes, such as the mixed media techniques that will teach you how to approach these sorts of outdoor sketches. I also have a course, How to Start a Nature Journal, and all of my individual classes are available to buy separately. Back in April, I was driving over the hill back home after setting up an exhibition and saw the first bat of the year flying. Because I didn't have a reference photo because I was driving, I decided to use Google Street View, and my dad told me that you can flick through and find older photos, so I chose this one as my reference. Once again, I'm using the Derwent Inktense Studio pan set to do my underpainting. I used a lot of wet on wet technique here, building colour, and then added a dry brush over the top, almost scraping some of the dry colour on. It works really well on this heavily textured paper. This is Cardi paper, 320 GSM, and when you're using a dry brush it really does well kind of catch onto the texture of that paper, so you can have the wetter look underneath with a much sort of almost chalkier effect over the top, which really deepens the colour in those dark areas. I'm using a black here because I want to really make a silhouette of this hedge on the opposite side. By the way, the road markings that you can see there, I used the Jelly Roll pen to create those. The white lines work really well to show the details on the road. You see the sort of marks I'm making here. I'm holding the brush quite high up and making lots of little twig-like marks. And then in the areas where there's foliage, there's kind of more circular marks, and the paint is a lot more washed out. I was working quite quickly, but allowing each of the layers to dry. The great thing with Derwent Inktense is that you can do this, and these darker layers will show through your lighter layers that you put over the top, and they won't blend in because they dry permanent. That's probably my favourite thing about this medium. You can just keep on building up and up and up your layers, and you don't really have to worry too much about anything blending or moving. As you can see here, there were lots of layers that went into this hedge. I wanted it to look very richly textured, almost multicoloured. To darken it up, again using that dry brush technique and adding some dark pigment over the top, which catches onto the ridges of the paper. Now just painting in a little bit of green, trying to give it that kind of coming towards spring look of the fresh leaves that were starting to erupt early in April. Now it's time to put in the bat. I had to think hard about how to do this. I didn't have a reference photo or a video of the bat in flight from the moment I saw it. I figured it was probably a common pipistrelle, so I went onto Google and just searched up some videos and some stills of flying bats. It was just a single bat I saw, but I figured I could make it look like a bat in flight by putting lots of different movements of different motions of the bats when they're flying together in a kind of flight path from one side of the painting to the other. Once I'd done my fine liner outlines, I just coloured it in with a little bit of dark Inktense and a little splash of white for the highlight. I'm really happy with how this flying bat page came out, and even happier to finally be working into spring in my Microseasons Nature Journal. I'm catching up, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm going to be away for a little bit, so I'll be back in about a month with a new video. September's a really busy month for me. First off, I'm off on holiday to beautiful Pembrokeshire. So when I come back, I'll be sharing some of the paintings that I do out there and a few little scenes. So I'll just do a kind of short holiday vlog, so you can see what I get up to there. Then I've got Devon Open Studios going on, so locals to Devon can come and see us at Unborn Bridge Studio in Collerton up until the 21st, I believe, of September. And then I've also got the Wild Wonder Conference where I'm teaching this year. I'm teaching a class called How to Nature Journal a River. So if you haven't signed up for the Wild Wonder Nature Journaling Conference, make sure you do that before we kick off. And that's going to be in mid-September. So yeah, make sure you've got a ticket if you haven't already, and I'll be back here on YouTube real soon. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to keep up with my Microseasons project and all my future nature journaling vlogs. I'll see you next time.